such a wild view. Uh, um, silent. Because it's afternoon time again. All right. So, welcome to episode 2 of the Progress Podcast. And I'm joined today for now by Nelly Blaze, one of our candidates for the upcoming election. Nelly, say hello.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me, Melissa.
You're welcome. Feels kind of like a talk show, kind of talk show vibe, huh?
Yeah, it feels like that, the setup and everything.
Yeah, but so welcome again. This is episode 2, as I mentioned, of the Progress Podcast. We have a few topics to cover today. And of course, Nelly as well has said that he's got some questions from persons curious about some of the items that we're going to discuss. So let me just get right into it with, of course, the coffee fact of the day, which is there were many cases throughout coffee's history, and I don't know if you knew this, Nelly, where people tried to ban the consumption of coffee. Actually, Pope Vincent at one point in time considered it to be sacrilegious to consume coffee until he himself tried it and then was like, you know what, maybe not so sacrilegious. And people could drink it without any worries of their soul being condemned to, wherever. Thankfully for me, it has not been banned ever. So I'm grateful for that. Do you drink coffee?
Yeah, I do
Yeah?
drink coffee, and I can't believe someone would try to ban coffee. That's like insane.
How do you take your coffee though?
With milk, 2 sugars, with cream.
Cream? Okay, yeah. I take mine with oat milk more recently,
Oat
like
milk,
trying to
oh,
do the
yeah,
non-dairy
yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times when you buy like the oat milk creamer in the store, you don't even need to add sugar. So,
Mm.
and I try not to add sugar to my coffee.
Yeah.
In Parliament, that's usually what I'm chugging on. How many cups a day do you usually have?
It depends. If I'm having a tough day, man, I go through like 4 cups. But
I think
if it's
my
a regular day, 1 cup.
Yeah, I think my all-time limit was when I lived in the Netherlands, and we had on every floor we had like a free coffee machine, the Dow Express machine.
Yeah.
So you just go put a cup, press a button. And I think one time my colleague and I were like, we need to stop because I think combined we were having like at least 14 cups a day. She'd have 7,
14 cups
I'd
a
have
day.
like 6 or 7. Yeah. Because it was like this big a cup. And then, you don't think about it. Like you go to the bathroom, it's right there. You come out, you're like, maybe a cup of coffee. And then by the time you blink, all of a sudden, you can see sound and like, hair colors. So that's when we were like, it's time to cut it out. But yeah, that is the coffee fact for today. So thankful that coffee has not been banned and that we can enjoy it freely. Today, some of the topics that we're going to be going over are this week's upcoming meetings. As you know, last week was a non-meeting week, as I explained on the live, and this upcoming week is a meeting week of Parliament. So we do have a couple meetings, 2 that I mentioned on the stream last week, which is the question hour with the Minister of VSA, Omar Atley, about COVID numbers, just to kind of see where we're at. You keep seeing all these different strains and such popping up in North America, Europe, and we are open for business. So you have to kind of reckon that it's traveling again, via air flights and cruises, etc. Question hour, for those who don't know, you can submit questions in writing to a minister and request that the minister come to Parliament to answer them in kind of an extraordinary public meeting where he or she answers the questions on the spot. So they've gotten the questions in advance, they collect the answers, and then they come and they answer. Thereafter, I think it's every member has a limit of 2 minutes to ask questions on the topic. So not that we bring the minister in to talk about COVID numbers, and then let's say MP Peterson has some questions, or MP De Weaver, and then they say, well, can you tell us more about the work permit status, whatever. It can't go like that. It has to be on the topic of COVID numbers and our COVID response, because that's actually what my questions were primarily about. So yeah, looking forward to that. I think it is the second question hour that I've called. Last year, some might recall that I had requested a question hour with the Minister of Rami when the GB hack had happened. I think that question hour took place on June 9th, 2022. So yeah, so it is a tool that, it's handy, because if you need answers like ASAP, if you submit the questions, like I think the Thursday before the Thursday, then the following Monday, the minister should be able to come in and answer. Like that's how it is in the rules of order. So tomorrow that's going to be happening, I think, at 2 p.m. Tuesday we have a meeting of the sorry, Tuesday we don't have a meeting about it, but it is going to be the town hall. I think we're all going to that, the electoral reform town hall. And as many may know, we've been working on removing the curtain from the voting booth, which is also part of the electoral reform process. Electoral reform is really strengthening your democratic processes. So it's definitely something that we've had our eye on, and as I mentioned last time, it's been approved, and now it's with the Council of Advice, and then we'll see how it goes further in the trajectory from there. So, and if you have any questions about anything, just feel free to hop in. I'll pass you the non-existent mic. But yeah, and then on Friday, let me just check my schedule, because I know that Tuesday we had a meeting I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, I'll mention that a little later. So on Friday we have a update meeting with the Minister of Justice. That's concerning the draft national ordinance and details related to the function book for the justice workers, as well as an update on the draft criminal procedure code. This has been a draft ordinance that is long running right now. The changes to be made to the criminal procedure code, and I think maybe in the future we should dedicate like a whole stream to it, because it's such a involved process. The CFATF recommendations are very technical, very like, sometimes it can be confusing, but it's all meant to kind of protect your country's financial institutions and their functioning, and of course to adequately punish those who would abuse them. So that's interesting to hear what has to be said. I think it was meant to be a closed door, but as per the last update, it's been opened up now. So, and yeah, that's it for in terms of like meetings. We do have like a continuation of an education committee meeting about the short current issues involving teachers, like vacation pay, their vacation schedule. This is something that's been requested since like February by MP Emmanuel. We had a session, and then it's been adjourned for the minister to return and answer some questions. And then Wednesday is the big meeting that I spoke about last time, which everyone has been kind of talking about, outside of just the media, which is the situation with Enya. So on Wednesday at 2 p.m., the Minister of Finance will be in Parliament to talk about the proposed, the ongoing Enya situation, and I've asked for a detailed outline. The proposed Enya loan has been mentioned in the media by State Secretary Van Huffelen, and the impact that would have to the national budget and government's intentions towards the situation, considering that the deadline actually is September 30th. So it's hopefully we can have that discussion and that dialogue with the Minister of Finance, ask our questions, and get some tangible and clear ways that government plans to address it. Because I think the Enya topic has come up almost every conversation I've been having over the last few weeks, and I'm really hoping that this meeting will shed some light on what's been happening.
Definitely interested in the Enya topic to
Yeah.
learn more about it. Yeah, so I can't wait until the Minister of Finance does come in, because I do want to understand what is going to happen to the people that are impacted. So.
Yeah, and then we have I think on the island we have about 3,000 policyholders. I believe that's the numbers that were shared in the past. So the bulk of the impact is going to be, of course, to those policyholders in Curacao. But the Enya situation is just tricky. It's like it's a private company that now we are being made to kind of foot the bill for. So I'm interested to hear again what has been attempted, because when we were talking about it the other day, you mentioned the June 30th, which was the previous deadline for us to have a solution or proposed solution, for it moving forward. And now we've come to this kind of impasse where it's like this loan is there. So I think I would like to hear, what all was attempted, what all was investigated and explored, and how do we come to this particular point. So yeah, and then So yeah, Tuesday's meeting is a committee TAC meeting, and it's requested by MP Halligan Martin, and it has to do with the taxis. So her agenda point was discussion with the Taxi Association regarding taxi sector concerns and suggestions. Initially, I didn't really have many questions for that, but I think one that I am going to ask is that earlier this year, in a meeting that we have with the Minister of TAT, he mentioned that there would be no new issuing of taxi licenses. In fact, even when in the paper, because I believe MP De Weaver kind of, challenged what she was hearing in the public. The Taxi Association was contacting us as well. That there will be no new issuance of those. However, it kind of seems like they found like a workaround on how to kind of exploit, temporary license holders that can now get a T plate or a B plate. So it's a little haphazard how it came across to me, and I'm curious to see how, what was the motivation behind that? Because if you drill it down to what it looks like now, it was kind of just, well, it's a neat way to give out new licenses, and that's not something that I think, that's not something that we want to continue to do, because when you listen, and this is why we preach stakeholder consultation, because when you listen to and if you even read the press releases of the Taxi Association, etc., there is a lot of talk already about it being a very saturated market. We are just 16 square miles on the Dutch side, 37 the wider whole, but how many taxis do you need? I think is the thinking behind the association kind of saying, well, you have us, you have car rentals as well. How do you balance, the economies of scale when it comes to those particular services? So that's going to be Tuesday's meeting. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, we'll kind of have to see what the minister has to say, especially in regards to the update to MP Halligan Martin. And lastly, not least, GB.
Yeah.
Are you getting bills?
So I am getting bills, but I don't handle the payment of the bills. That's my wife. She handles the finances.
Yeah.
However, I do know that we have certain citizens that are not receiving their bills or having incorrect statements within their bills. So I know it is an issue that is going on. I recently seen in the newspaper that Coffee is, or however you pronounce it, is having some kind of formulation where citizens can come in to complain about certain practices that GB is doing.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, so I think that's a good initiative, because we do need some kind of central office where we can document bad practices or malpractices of businesses that are taking advantages of our citizens. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the latest was that yesterday they sent around a notice talking about extra chlorine to be added to the water in certain neighborhoods. And my neighborhood wasn't included in that, but I try not to drink with that water anyway. But I think you live in one of the affected neighborhoods. So did you notice like a extra chlorine?
I saw the statement, the press release, but I don't know the reasoning behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't noticed anything yet, but I just want to understand, but why is this happening?
Yeah.
Did they explain the reason behind it?
I think it was regular water treatment or something like that, but it wasn't really much behind it in the sense of like a definitive answer. It was just, well, it's regular water treatment, but I can't recall seeing a statement like this previously. Of course, could be that I missed it, but I'm not really sure.
The thing that I want from GB is, if they're going to do something like this, if they can always explain it from a scientific point, from scientific research, and make sure that citizens understand, okay, is this dangerous? Is this healthy? What are the disadvantages? What are the advantages? To make sure that we're informed, because I feel sometimes they have these press releases and there's nothing to back the information that they're giving us.
Yeah, exactly. And like you mentioned, that someone I saw while I was looking at the post that they made on Facebook, where someone asked, or said that it would be nice if they could explain the reasons behind it, etc., or why, and then we as a public could make a decision, informed decision on whether we want to use the water or not. Because you have to, like, for me, when I saw it, I thought, well, okay, persons may be hesitant to use it, but then you have people who maybe can't afford to buy bottled water to cook with, so they don't have a choice, so they can't afford to buy bottled water to drink. So, what is their option then, if you can't use the water coming out of the pipe? So I think I definitely agree with you on that one, Nelly, that it's something that can should be then, that they explain, not maybe in the full scientific terms, because I ain't gonna lie, so science is not my strong point. I mean, I'm interested in it, but sometimes when you put out those terms, people tend to be like, see the word and be like, okay, no, scroll, because it's a little intimidating. So
maybe get someone from the marketing team to break it down.
break it down into layman's terms. Yeah. No, definitely. But yeah, you said you had some questions about some stuff that was up with discussion. So hit me with it and let's see.
Let me see. So which topic are we gonna run through first? Because I know that you have these different bullet points that you.
Yeah, no, whichever one you are. Before you get to that, I see we had a comment that says to Super Kid, what's up? To my knowledge, the chlorine issue was more chlorine used during treatment than usual. Probably a mistake or someone hand was too heavy.
Is that a scientific explanation?
Hey, I feel like a lot of science is oops, kind of like discovery kind of thing. So well, let's hope that it was just someone hand was a little too heavy and it's something that they can fix in the future going forward. But yeah. But no, like you tell me, like I know when I mentioned to the team as well about the COVID numbers and everything, there was some questions there. There's probably as well some questions about what you think about electoral reform and about that town hall. Like I'm curious to see, how it goes. I'm curious to hear from the community what questions they may have. So yeah.
Okay, so something that I was talking with my wife. She has a degree in science, and she's quite interested in health topics here on the island. And we were discussing the CDC, and the CDC has this COVID-19 personal health plan. When I go onto it, I'll just tell you what it says.
Mhm.
Start your personal COVID-19 plan. So they have a plan for citizens if they're at risk, if they can take a test, and then they have the treatment, and then they have the healthcare provider and all of that information. Do we have that in St. Martin? A personal COVID-19
Well,
plan?
that's I don't know if we have a personal plan, but that's part of what part of the questions that I submitted was, like what is the protocol? Not so much for like person to person, but on a whole, like, what happens if, because something that we talked a lot about during the height of the pandemic then was like, okay, so how do we make sure that we have a better response next time? I think around us we had a lot of examples of what was a good response, a great response, etc. I think Sabre had a great response. They controlled their numbers very tightly, very closely, and it worked out well for them in the end, and it also prompted them to make themselves a little more resilient, by finding, like, for example, different import options for food, etc. Kickstarted a lot of agricultural projects again on the island. So I think we see the benefit of that in the benefit of the pandemic in Sabre. But yeah, I asked primarily, what is the plan in the event of, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about in the event of, but I mean that's life, you know. A joke I had made like at the beginning of the pandemic was myself and like Marvin and stuff, we play a lot of games, a lot of video games that deal with end of the world scenarios, let's say. And sometimes it ends up being a pandemic, and it may sound silly, but you kind of get to hear like, okay, well, what would be best practices in such an event? And I think just having that plan, written out and just in a vault somewhere, it goes a long way to help you just take it out, dust it off, and there you go. You hope that the situation never arises, of course, but better to have the plan than to not have it at all. Yeah, for sure. But the CDC did put out; they have a lot of good resources and such. But I think it ultimately boils down to the people. Like you'll see some states had better, did better than others when like I think like Texas and Florida, they just don't care. It's kind of like whatever. So
I don't want St. Martin to become
Florida.
Yeah. I hope we can have better control, and I know it's always difficult to make a plan, but you have, as you said, you have examples of the CDC with their resources. We have the Netherlands as well, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
So hopefully, we can take best practices. A perfect example, Saba.
Yeah.
You can consult
Yeah.
with Saba and see how you can follow their steps. And I don't think it's an issue if you consult with other nations or islands that are close
Yeah.
to get a solution to a problem.
For sure.
I think it shows that you're intuitive and forward thinking. So hopefully, we can come up with a plan just in order for us to mitigate what is going on here with the reemergence of COVID-19.
Most definitely, and whatever else may come. That's
Yeah.
the thing. So yeah, I think that's important to do for sure. And it's funny because it's something that you have to. So you write the plan, and then you should also practice it. Like I remember, when most of the companies I've worked for here, randomly in July, you'll get an email saying that there's a Category 4 hurricane approaching, blah, blah, blah. And then we have to drop everything, go to a management meeting and such. It's just a drill, but those things kind of keep the plan fresh in your head, And I say that because you look at the US, where they have plans for in case of biological, chemical weapon attack, biological weapon attack and such. But when this pandemic broke out, they had a hard time, especially on a state level, getting people to just kind of do the plan. Whether it was there, and that speaks a lot about to the leadership that was there at the time. But it it just reiterated for me, like, okay, you could have the plan, but it's good to drill the plan out as well, just to have that practice, done. Yeah.
My last question: do you think it's a good idea, whether it's justice or health, if we can have simulations? We don't have to have the entire population, but a small segment that can always simulate if there's going to be an emergency. What is the protocol?
Yeah.
So I see that the Dutch Royal Marines does simulations.
Yeah.
So I think if we can do that as a nation, and as you said, drill it over and over and over, so when the actual event does come, we are prepared.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
I mean, I think it is a good idea. I think it also speaks to community involvement, because then it's less of a shock. In the event that it does happen, you have to let people know what is the plan, and then what is the plan, and then let them be involved in the execution of it, and the practice of it too. Like I sometimes in when I was at school, they'd have like fire drills, and then someone would have to be like the victim, and then you'd have to do CPR and stuff like that, or rudimentary CPR, just to see if there were students that had an aptitude, that if your roommate passes out, you know what to do. So, you could volunteer to be the victim, volunteer to be the savior, like it doesn't matter. But those are the types of drills that, generally help you avoid catastrophic incidents, I guess. So, yeah. I wanted to ask you a question. Yes.
About to pass up.
Don't do that. I mean, if you do, I'm sure somebody in here got I'm doing rudimentary CPR. So no, but a lot of people in the community, don't really know. Like, for example, Friday's justice meeting, the draft criminal procedure code. A lot of people in the community don't really know what it's about. And I wanted to ask, as someone who's new now to the political arena, like, are you aware of it? Are you aware of what it is and what it entails, what the threat is if we don't adhere to the CFATF? Do you know what a CFATF is?
I do not.
All right. No, so most people don't, to be honest with you. And so the CFATF is the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. That is the Caribbean arm of the Financial Action Task Force, which is the FATF, which is a European-based financial regulation. So it's basically for anti-money laundering, etc. The draft criminal procedure code is supposed to incorporate recommendations from the CFATF. So they had some recommendations for, like, how do we prosecute financial crime, essentially. And each country that falls under that, jurisdiction has to kind of implement these measures to make sure that they're prosecuting financial crime properly. So I think, I wanted to know like if you knew about it and what you think it's about, now that you know the name of it.
Yeah.
Um, and also, what do you think about, for example, the fact that in the draft criminal procedure code, they want to, there is a article that talks about um, remote access to like devices and such. Like, especially if you look now at what's been happening with persons saying certain things about people via WhatsApp, Facebook, etc. Whether it's true or not, or so. Like, what are your thoughts then on for Sumatin, like a digital crime law, basically?
I think it's necessary and we do need a digital crime law. Talking about financial, if you have a criminal code procedure that helps you combat financial fraud, I think that's something that we need to have regulated here in St. Martin to ensure that we are in compliance with other nations. For instance, with ENIA, that's a perfect example because I I don't understand the entire concept of what happened,
Mhm.
but if it's money laundering or if it's plain out corruption that has to do with our citizens, how are we going to take the company to court, and what are the different steps, and how are we going to make sure or ensure that the citizens are not duped or anything like that,
Yeah.
that we protect them. So I think we need to have that in place here on this island and inform the people about that. And when it comes to having procedures with digitizing, um, what was it again? Digitizing, what did you mention before?
Oh, that it was mostly about remote access to like devices and stuff like that for persons who commit financial crime or are suspected of committing a crime in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to digitize all of that because we're moving towards a society that is more towards technology based. And I feel that we don't have that integration of technology yet in St. Martin. And I don't think that we should be left behind. So I think it's important that we do integrate all of these different tools and make sure that our citizens have that access to that sort of technology.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. See, it wasn't that bad. Nah, so that's that's gonna actually be it for us today. I've tried to keep it a little short because last time I talked for almost an hour. But I want to thank you, Nelly, for joining us on the Good Afternoon Show, the Progress Podcast today. And I obviously it's not going to be the last time that you're here, but thank you for joining. Thank you for your questions because it's important that everybody's going to have queries about the things that are discussed in Parliament, and I do urge people to tune in when they can. I know a lot of people say it's frustrating for them. I get it, but that's why we try to give you like the little updates and breakdowns, and also to just hear what are the things, the thoughts out there in the community about what we're discussing. The draft criminal procedure code. When I lived in the Netherlands, I worked for a trust company, so money laundering regulation is forever evolving, and I think when we do have like a session kind of dedicated to this, perhaps after Friday's meeting, I'll kind of explain, why it's important to update and introduce, new laws. And when I say like introduce a new law, I'm not saying that that's something I believe should be driven by Parliament, because the Justice Ministry should drive the execution and the implementation of a cybercrime law, of a digital crime law, basically. They have that high level helicopter view of what is needed and what is possible, and then you can kind of drill down from there to your other laws and connect the dots in that regard. Because that's one of the topics that has come up a lot, is that we don't have such a main cybercrime law. But in any event, I'm curious to see where it goes, because it's forever changing. And now, as you've seen what happened with FTX, etc. You have a lot of cryptocurrency exchanges that have been crumbling because at the end of the day, the regulation is there. It's not going to go away. So in fact, it's just going to get worse. Um, but yeah, so thank you for joining, Nelly. Thank you for joining. And next week as well, we're going to be back. Maybe with you, maybe with someone else. Who knows? It'll be the mystery. Maybe I'll get a special chair and then cover it and then unveil like the mystery, the mass singer. Sometimes that show is fun. But yeah, so thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week. And I can't believe September is almost over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's going real quick.
too quick. But yeah, thank you, and have a good one.